You are now listening to Femme Regard Podcast with Tessa Markle
and Carolina Alvarez.
Femme.
So thank you for listening to part 1. If you haven't yet, go back and listen to part 1 first and then come back to this one, part 2 on podcasting.
We are back in the studio with Mike Casentini, continuing this lovely conversation with T on podcasting. And I think another key thing to think about is who your audience is, what are the messages. I think we align ourselves with TV and film. So that's like when you look us up, they know, like these platforms know exactly where to put us. And I think you were mentioning earlier about how they're very specific nowadays about like how they go about categorizing on Stitcher, iTunes, all the big platforms.
Yeah, I mean it's becoming, curation is the new world for this content. It's saturated. Don't kid yourself. Entering into podcasting today, you're a product of being in a huge fishbowl.
Yeah.
And the more you can be thinking about production value, but at the same time thinking about how you are consistent and the quality of your own content are going to equal, a better result for you with the time you spend to create this stuff. But they are becoming more specific. Recently, Apple, who is dictating, even though Apple doesn't really care that much about anything other than selling iPhones and watches and laptops and whatnot. But, Apple is the franchise player in this game. The more successful you are on Apple, meaning that you try to convince people about rating and commenting on your Apple podcast relationship equals what every other platform will look at you as, and you'll see yourself grow. If you're new and noteworthy in Apple, it's most likely you're going to be new and noteworthy on all the other platforms. But really, looking at how you can build confidence in your content is the key. And did I answer that question?
Yeah, you did. So. And I think on the I like you brought up the Apple platform, that has been something that you put in our fourth site about, like, that is
listeners,
where
it's important for you to rate and comment.
Yeah, because like if you want to have your ranking, they do rank podcasts, and so when you get a bunch of subscribers all at once, then you're moved up to like podcasts like whatever the week. That's not right, but you get what I'm saying.
Top
like
10,
top
news
10,
and
exactly.
All that stuff.
And then if you want to, we'd love to, monetize off of this. It's not like we care more about sharing our content, but it'd be nice to like also
know about monetizing. How do you make money on podcasts?
Yeah.
First of all, you got to take your shirts off, guys. All the guys, ladies, keep your shirts on, but the guys,
man nipples
if
only.
they take their shirts off, it's amazing. You win every time. Ladies, put a jacket on.
I'm actually wearing a turtleneck today, and I have to say it is really hot in here. And
it's because we're drinking Fireball.
No, it's because Tessa's in the building. Am I
true.
right?
That is true.
No.
But like that you have to use a platform like Apple to get other companies, if you want to align yourself with a brand, to take you to that level, right?
I would say that Apple is sort of the key leader. If you're doing well in Apple Town, and I make my own words up for stuff, but if you're doing well in Apple Town, it's most likely that you're doing well in every other platform, because a lot of people take a beat from Apple. They look in to see how they're curating content, and then they also, if they are like a Spotify or a Google or whatever, they're going to do their own work too. It's not to say that they're just going to take a page off of Apple. But that being said, the more you consider Apple, I've found that you start to see a growth in all the other platforms. And I think they do look in
which
and
you
go,
want to be on as well.
You want to be on Apple, on Spotify, on Google.
Stitcher.
And Stitcher. Those are the franchise players that you want to be on, and then some of the other ones will just pick you up because they're looking at RSS feeds. To be a traditional podcast is to have an RSS feed that's clear. And if you don't know what RSS feed is, I don't want to talk to you.
Google it.
Google it. Yeah, we won't get into the like real techie stuff.
Yeah,
but
to be monetized, I mean, that really takes numbers.
Yeah.
And
you know, and there are so many ways to look at it. Listen, I have worked with podcasters that have such a niche market that they know that they'll never reach certain thresholds that you have to reach that would get you monetized more, in a more traditional sense. But, you know, when you look at some of these companies that are niche and they build a good platform and the content's strong, they can solicit people that can cradle to the grave them as they grow numbers. You know, they can start off with some nominal fee, like just sponsor me for the month. It's no different than really kind of a Patreon or a GoFundMe type of a attitude in monetizing a podcast if it's meaningful and it presents itself uniquely to a market that doesn't necessarily have strong, that will never be, you know, NFL football, you know, Super Bowl style numbers.
Absolutely.
But to get after a more real, you know, monetizing approach to podcasting, when you're, you know, more in the space of taking on the Caspers and the Sherry's Berries and the you know, all the different .com-y type, you know, promotional outlets, you're gonna have to get after 5,000 to start on a per episode basis, and they measure podcast episodes in a 30-day, the time it was launched to the end of 30 days of that launch, and they look at what you garnished on a downloads perspective.
Okay.
And it only matters your domestic value. So nobody cares about how popular you are in Australia or in France or in Germany.
Because we're pretty hot in Australia, actually.
Yeah, no, I mean, and you're hot probably in France too. And
actually,
UK,
yes, that's true.
And UK.
They don't even know what we're saying, but
they don't
you know.
know, but it's fine.
The reality is that it's a domestic value point. So they're going to look at your U.S. and your Canada numbers.
Oh, we got some Canada.
Yeah,
there,
you do.
So we do.
We got a handful.
Nova Scotia's all about you, baby. But at the end of the day, when you measure the domestic value that you have, that's all they care about.
Okay,
today,
I didn't know that.
Today.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that is good to know.
And quite frankly, it's different when you're on YouTube, right? And you can take audio content because 75% of all active users on YouTube listen to content versus watch it.
I didn't know that till the other day. Like a friend brought that up and I was like, really?
Yeah. More people on YouTube. It's number 2 in search. It's Google is 1 and their sister company is 2. But the reality is that 75% of people are listening to this stuff. They're turning, and they use YouTube to search. It's a good search.
It totally makes sense.
And they listen to the content. So when people are building these videos right now, long form, they're not getting watched.
Yeah.
You know, and people are blowing their time and wad and everything else. I mean, it's like, you know, podcasts for right now, as we are in audio renaissance, and wait till the video becomes, or make 2-minute videos. Everybody make 2-minute videos. Slow it down because people don't know what they want anymore. You got to put a little dingle, 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 dingle in front of them and be like, you like this?
Yeah.
But no, when you deal with content that wants to be monetized and you're talking about long form will make you more money in the long game. But the reality is that you've got to get 5,000 plus on your audio content, US and Canada, and you're going to get a nominal fee for one live read, maybe sporadically. But when you start hitting the 20 and 30,000, and you've genuinely built a program that is, you know, sticking the landing on distribution and being available. The one thing people miss, and what we're dealing with right now, is that the more you distribute a week, the more desirable you are to ad buyers. If you are a 5-day-a-week show, you're more desirable than a once a week. If you're doing these sort of, I'm going to push 20 episodes out at once,
What we do.
And I'm not mad at you for that.
Don't be mad.
But
yes,
you
do say.
conditioning your audience in that regard means if you're going after a monetization value, you need to build that into how you market yourself for the buyers. Because you got to be like, we're going to do this big push with 20 episodes, come with me. But you rolling them out. And when I talked to you in the beginning of time and I told you to do a bulk push, it wasn't for the legacy of your project,
Right.
quite frankly.
I hear you.
It was to get you jump started in the podcasting space.
Right.
And so for me, it's like, if you want to, start to roll these things out on a weekly basis or push 1, 2, 3 times a week, it may make more sense for you if you're trying to attract a buyer.
That makes sense.
Because
Absolutely.
a buyer wants, like a buyer who's trying to meet its quota on, using Valentine's Day as an example.
Right.
They're going to want you all the way to the 14th of February.
Yeah.
2 weeks out
that's right.
and every single day.
We were just trying to like build it, have like that bulk set to the beginning. I think you made that, you said get to 20 or 40 like as soon as you can of episodes. So that way people are like, oh, they have there's the show, there's the content. And I think that's super smart to think in that way, that structure. And something I really loved when we were getting used to our platform on the show and how we should go about is like that you were like always pushing for feel free to experiment because it's always changing. And like there's a successful 5-minute show even out there that I was like 5 minutes, and you're like, yeah, it makes sense. Like sometimes you just want that quick, like,
it's called marketing school, everybody.
What's the thing? It's like there's trends, but there's no real rules. I mean, it's all still like kind of new media, quote unquote, and nobody have made the rules for that yet. It's always changing.
Well, but the stat data always kicks you in your teeth. I mean, because, we can obviously acquire the hour and a halves, the 45-minute shows, the 20-minute shows, the 30-minute shows, the 5-minute, 10-minute, whatever. But the stat data says for every 60 minutes of content, 20 minutes gets listened to on average. That's the first 20.
That doesn't surprise me.
That's the first 20.
0
to 20 on a 60.
No,
that
makes
means
sense.
Between 20 and 60, that 40-minute block did not get digested. That means you're burning through content.
Yeah.
I agree.
Why don't you produce in a 60-minute 320s?
Right.
And actually push out, 3 times in a week, a Monday, Wednesday, Thursday push, and let everybody digest the parts. Since it's not us, at least not me. I'm 1,000 years old. I show up to things at 8 o'clock and go, Ed, are you on? You gotta be on. Hello? That's how I talk to my smart TV. How do I turn you on? Because we're having a relationship. It's weird. No, but it's
2019, baby.
Yeah, it's happening.
It's happening.
But you've gotta make sure that people care about the content and want to digest it, or you're done.
So, real quick, for those of those podcasters out there who aren't able to get on a studio like yours,
Yeah, people in
that you
smaller
set up,
markets that they don't have access to stuff to places like network studios.
like what's just a basic, like, this is a survival kit, let's call it. What's a good mic that you might suggest? And I would say Adobe Audition is what I use to edit on. That's been super fantastic. Would you say like what's your 2 or 3 couple necessary tools if they can't get access to like a fabulous studio as yours?
Well, first of all, I would say that if they ever want to talk about any of this stuff, they can always call the network studios, and we consult with people.
That's right.
We help people identify with studios. We actually built Will Smith's one of Will Smith's companies, the Westbrook Media Company. He's got Westbrook and Overbrook, which does films. And so we helped them
That's
out
so
with their studio. We've also helped the Comedy Store here in Los Angeles. We have helped Blackbird House, which is in Culver City, that deals with a workspace for women of color. We've done Adam Ferreira, who is on Top Gear and Rescue Me and Nurse Jackie. And he's
So
a
when you
comedian.
say
We've helped
you've
people
helped
build.
them.
We've helped
you
people
like
build
go
their
in
studio.
and build it up. Like you're like, you
Yeah.
need these mics. You need like
I literally
this sound.
spend their
Okay.
money and put it in their space
Lovely.
and do that for them. So there is that part of my business. So for people who want help in designing and executing and putting their money where their mouth is in their own studio, and remember, you're always going to have to man the ship.
Right.
The difference between my outfit and you taking it on yourself is that I've got 25 years of manning the ship, and they have today.
Right.
So there's that.
True. Very true.
But that being said, there's a product called the H4N. In the community that you work within, the film community, you know that it's on the end of every boom.
Yep.
That's holding up a microphone. That's usually a shotgun mic and a Sennheiser, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
the reality is that it's an XLR-driven, cable-oriented microphone that does have opposing mics on it that I would never recommend that you would do in a podcast or anything other than sound checking, but it is there for your pleasure. The H4N is a 2 to 4, whereas the H6N is a 4 to 6.
Yep.
And ultimately, both of those products are flagshipy in the game of self-recording,
Because they come with different like mic heads, y'all. So with you'll see the two ones that you should not.
Yeah, they're opposing mics.
But then you can put on the right.
I would never, from a podcasting perspective, they're great to just capture shit.
Yeah.
But it's not what I would ever do like we do here in the studio. I would get Mogami Gold XLR cables, 6 to 10 footers, based on how far away you want to get to the person, and then I would go with a Shure. They're in the 57 space as far as the numbering. I'm misplacing the actual mic, but the snow cone mics, the kind of mics that you see on the comedy stage or that you see at like different events. They look like you're holding a snow cone in your hand with a tiny little snow cone.
Yeah.
And those kind of mics are the only discipline that you have to do when you're doing a one-on-one interview is just to be like, bring the mic up towards yourself. You got to do a little, get used to hand gesturing and be like, bring that mic up. Bring it up. Bring it up.
And so along with that, a good pair of headphones to hear.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that we're using right now.
He's checking it out, y'all. He's checking it out.
These are the ones that we are using. The
you want to bring that mic
Audio
up?
Technica's ATH M20X.
I'm not going to repeat that, y'all, so just play it back. You missed that. But
Write it down when you go to the store.
But it was loud and clear. I heard it. So
yeah, I mean, that's a good kit. That's a good kit. And, but the things that you also have to remember when you're doing remotes is the environment.
I was just going to say, like, we noticed real quick the echoey, like, we had some, like, when we were trying to just do some stuff in my living room.
Yeah, I mean, that was another deciding factor for us to come to the studio is,
like, it was just like a pain in the butt trying to get, because, you need to build that environment.
Yeah, I mean, if you look above us, we have T-bar, which is how these, panels are being held, but those are 2-inch Corning glass insulated panels. I spent $100,000 putting 3 inches on all the walls, including resonance channel, soundboard, and quiet rock. So everything about these rooms have been prepared for sound, which is different than what you would ever get when you live in your Malibu home with glass floor-to-ceiling walls. Not to say you guys live in Malibu, but that's usually some of my clients.
That's the living room I'm talking about.
Yeah,
that's
it's just like,
that was Carolina's old living room.
I literally,
no, it's the new one. I'm not satisfied.
I literally can tell when people send me their content and it's in a kitchen. I go, "Is that tile floor? Are you in front of?" Because it literally. Things bounce. Voice bounces. It bounces, off everything.
Yeah.
So you really want to be smart. Or it's always going to sound like you're in a tunnel.
Yeah.
And that's not what we're going
fun.
for.
No,
that's not what we want to hear.
Tune out whenever I hear that.
Yeah.
For sure.
So,
well, Mike, let our listeners know how they can find you, what the website is, social media, whatever you want to share.
So the website is The Network Studios. That's The Network Studios, plural.com. And then you can also visit us on Instagram at The Network Studios, all one word, lowercase, as that is, I think, always the case.
I think
isn't
that's
it?
usually.
I don't think the case matters. I think you can capitalize lowercase.
Well, just in case.
Capital F in
Just in
Femme
case the
Regard is no, just kidding. It's
Just in
not.
case, I'm Casentini, and you've been listening to the Casentini Hour. No, but yeah, we're here at the Network Studios, Culver City, California. And you know, I love you girls. You guys are doing fabulous work on your own and making
Thank
magic happen
you.
and bringing people together. And this is what we do, podcasting.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
For everything you do for us,
Grazie,
but
grazie.
especially being on
Prego.
today.
Prego. No, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom to our listeners. I can't wait to share this episode. They're gonna.
Well, I hope they don't think I was
Don't-
drunk off the fireball. I mean, this is crazy.
I mean, not
It was
you.
a
One
lot.
way to do a
Maybe
podcast.
me. We're gonna have fun re-listening to this one again.
Just edit where it's appropriate. That's
Yeah,
all
absolutely. I'm
Fair
with
enough.
you. Well, cheers
Magic
to
of
that.
editing.
And we out.
Thanks for listening to Femme Regard Podcast. If you like what you hear, tune in next time for more tips on the filmmaking business and insightful conversations with industry professionals over tea. We can only grow with your support, so please subscribe, share, rate, and give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. If you leave us a great comment, we might give you a shout out on the show. For more on us, check us out at femregard.com.